Are you ready to make the cutest flamingo hooded towel? Me too. Let's sew this together. We're going to go step by step through the entire process. You need to get yourself a body towel, a hand towel, some felt pieces, and most importantly, you need to download your pattern. Go to bellebyjessi.com. That's Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. Download your pattern, gather your supplies, and meet me back here. We're going to sew this together. I have downloaded my pattern and my sewing directions, and the first thing I'm going to do is trim out my pattern pieces, starting with the hood, which is on 2 pieces of paper. So I'm going to trim them out and then tape them together. With my 2 pieces cut out, I'm getting some tape. I'm going to line up that dotted line and tape my 2 pieces together to make my full hood. Let's go ahead and cut this piece first and we can move it out of our way. So our hood is getting cut out of our hand towel. Now my hand towel is plain on one side and then one side has this stripe. I don't really want the stripe in my finished towel, so I am going to fold it not exactly in half, but I'm going to fold it to where the end lines up about to that stripe and see if I have enough space for my hood. Let's see real quick. Oh yeah, it just barely fits in there, so that's going to work for me. So what I want to do is line up this finished edge here. So I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to line that up. We're going to keep this finished edge. It's already done. Matches the towel. We're going to use that in our sewing. That'll save us a step. We don't want to refinish that edge since it's already finished. So on your pattern piece, you have a note down here about folding the towel in half and putting that finished edge along this side of your pattern piece, and then your fold goes here. So this corner matches up to that fold and that finished edge. Now you can pin just like you're used to pinning. Something I like to do that's a little bit quicker is get one of these old iron weights or irons and use it for a pattern weight. You just need one that's smooth on the bottom so it doesn't snag anything. But you can put that right on top of your pattern piece and it holds it in place while you cut. So trim around your hood. Make sure you do cut that notch for your little tuft. The towel is very linty when we cut it, so I'm going to go ahead and move that out of the way. And now let's get our felt pieces out. So all the rest of the pieces are for your face and your beak and your tuft of your flamingo. So I'm going to trim all of these out with my paper scissors and then cut them out of my various colors of felt. All of my felt pieces, you need 2, so that makes it a little easier. There's nothing tricky here, and they say what color on them. So I'm going to start with my little tuft. This is the top part of the flamingo's head, and I need 2 out of pink. So I'm going to fold my pink in half so I can cut 2 at the same time. I'm going to use the edge of my felt since I have a nice fresh piece here with a straight edge. And of course you can pin this down. I'll do that on the little bit smaller pieces. Sometimes I like to cheat a little bit, so I'm going to hold it with my fingers and trim around it that way. The beak is 2 parts. There's a dark brown and then a light yellow or tan to make the the flamingo's beak. So I'm going to do, let's see, we'll do the pale one first. Same thing, I need two. So I've got a nice fresh piece here with straight edges. I'm going to fold this in half, put my straight edge along that straight edge. That's one less thing I need to cut. Get my fabric scissors and trim around. This one doesn't exactly have a straight edge. You can see it's a little bit curved, so there's nothing to line up with the edge. Still going to put it close to the edge just so I'm not wasting too much. For my eyes, they're small pieces, so I'm using some scraps I already had instead of buying a whole new piece. So the larger part is the eye. We need two of those out of white. Let's see if I can fit them in this little section. Oh yeah. All right, I am going to pin these smaller pieces. They're a little bit hard to hold still. Felt is wonderful to use for crafts because it does not ravel, so we don't have to worry about these edges. So those edges will be exactly as they are on your towel. So if you need to slow down a little bit or tidy them up a little bit after you cut them, that's totally fine. All right, I've got a small piece here for my blue. That's what I'm going to do my pupil out of, is blue. I have plenty though. I'm going to pin this little piece and trim it out. See, I made mine a little bit pointy on the top. I'm just going to smooth that. Just a little. There we go. Probably should have put my glasses on for that one. All right, look at our adorable flamingo face here. Already looks cute, even not sewn together. So let's get our directions, our cut pieces, and our towels and head to the sewing machine. The first thing we're going to do is sew our 2-ply tuft together. This will go on the top of our flamingo's head. I want to stitch as close to the edge as I can all the way around the curved sections. I'm going to back stitch at each end, but there's no need to sew the flat part. So cute. All right, now we're going to open our hood piece, and it's very messy. Find our notch. There it is. We're going to put our tuft centered on our notch. So here's my notch right here. I'm going to put it centered on there. You choose which way you want it to go. This is the face. So if you want the short end that way or the long end that way, it really doesn't matter. You choose. We're going to stitch this across the straight edge just to hold it still. So you don't need to back stitch here. We just want to get it in its spot. There we go. And then we're going to close our hood. Whew. So we're going to close our hood and stitch this curved edge. We do need to back stitch at each end this time. I sew on about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so that's what I've designed this pattern on. If you need to take a little bit more than that, it's fine. It's not going to make that much difference on the hood. Now you can tell how messy this terry cloth is, so we want to go ahead and cover these seams now. That's what our bias tape is for. So we want to find our bias tape and look at the ends. And one side is always a little bit longer than the other side. So you can check both ends. You can see it a little bit more prominently here. But one side is always a little bit longer than the other side. The reason for that is when you're sewing, you want to put that longer side on the bottom. So I'm wanting to use it on this direction. So I'm going to put that longer side on the bottom. And that makes sure that when I'm sewing, I'm catching on the back. So you want to find yours and see which direction you need to turn it. And it looks like some of this they pressed totally even, but normally one side's a little bit longer. You want that longer side on the back. So we are going to cover that seam with our bias tape. This will confine all that raveling so it won't be messy for whoever's going to get to enjoy this flamingo towel. So I'm going to wrap this over. This edge is also going to get covered, so you don't have to do anything special here. Just back stitch so it stays in place. You can pin this down. I'm just going to manipulate it with my fingers as I go. And let's stitch it. When I get a few inches in, I always like to check and make sure I'm catching the back. I am. I have a little bit not as close to the edge on the back side. That's fine. The purpose of this is really just to cover that seam. So as long as we're catching it, not leaving any holes, it's going to be on the inside, so we don't have to stress too much about it looking perfect. So it's not totally straight on the back, but I've caught it everywhere, no holes, so I'm happy with that. Before we get all the way to the end, we don't want to have a raw edge on our bias tape either. So I'm going to cut it where I've got about an inch or so hanging off the edge. And I'm going to just fold that inside of itself. Just like that. So now I can stitch, let's see, I can stitch all the way to the edge, and I'm going to have a folded side here too. So there will be no raw edges at all. So cute. All right, before we put our face on, let's also cover this, the face opening, with another piece of the bias tape, just to make sure we are not going to be raveling all over the place anymore. So let me find my end. There we go. Oh, I want the other end. There we go. We're going to do exactly the same thing here. It's only one layer, so this is a little bit easier. Now, we already have a finished edge on our towel here, so we also want a finished edge on our bias tape. So I am going to fold that under before I wrap it around. So it looks like that. Everything's nice and finished. And then I'm going to stitch all the way across, do the same thing on the other end. Oh, I broke my thread. Okay, sorry about that. I broke my thread. Alright, so let me wrap this again. So one more time. I'm going to line all the way up with this nice finished end. So I'm going to make a nice finished edge out of my bias tape also, just by folding it inside. Wrap it around. And then I'm going to stitch all the way across. Back stitch at each end here. Alright, let's check, make sure, yep, catching it on the back side as well. This center seam is a little thicker, so if your machine needs a little help, you can just use the hand wheel to help it get over that. So when I get to this edge, I'm going to cut just a little bit extra so that I can fold it under. I'm going to try to make it line up so it'll just look really neat and tidy. There we go. So I've got this edge folded under, lined up so that everything, all those raw edges are covered. So there we go. Our hood is ready for its face, and everything is covered so we don't have any more of those messy edges or any more raveling. So we can put our hood to the side for a few minutes. Let me try to get some of this out of the way. We're going to work on our beak next, so let's get our beak pieces. So 2-ply here. So we're going to open these up. And our beak is just going to be 2-ply just to give it some more body, but also to cover the seam. So what we're going to do is stitch the upper beak and the lower beak together for each piece. There's a little bit of a curve in there, so you'll have to, sew it not exactly in a straight line. You'll have to curve that around. And I'm going to sew this at a very narrow seam allowance. I'm going to do it only at 1/4 inch. This is going to be hidden. So all we need is for the pieces to hold together. This is common in production work. Saves you the trouble of having to trim stuff off. And I do so like a production worker. So again, you can pin this if you're more comfortable with that. That's totally fine. I just sometimes like to manipulate it with my fingers and not bother with the pins on these smaller pieces. So there's going to be our beak. We're going to finger press that flat. We're going to make our other piece and then put them together like a sandwich with those seams on the inside. Finger press both of these pieces, and then you're going to put them together with those seams kissing each other. I am going to pin it this time to make sure that my beaks don't shift around. And don't worry if it feels bulky, that's actually going to be nice. It's going to give our finished beak a little body and keep it from drooping. I'm going to put let me find some pins. Don't worry about your seam allowance. If some of it's peeking out, we can trim that at the end. Excuse me, we can trim that at the end. Felt does not ravel, so we don't have to finish any of the edges. We just want them to look neat and tidy. Oh, that's going to be cute. All right, I have a very light pink thread. I'm going to sew this with the light pink thread so that I don't have to change my thread again. If you would like to pause and change your thread, feel free. But now that we've got those pieces together, we're going to stitch all around the outside edge of the beak. If you want to stitch the flat part, you can, or you don't have to. That's what's going to get attached to our hood. Same as before though, I am going to back stitch on each end, and I'm going to try to stitch as close to the edge as I can. Just looks a little bit neater. So cute. Love it. All right, so you can see on mine, I've got a little bit of seam allowance sticking out there on both sides. This felt right here didn't quite line up exactly right. That's fine because it's felt and we're not worried about the edges. You can trim it. Just want to do it again neat and tidy. You know, it just always looks better when it's neat and tidy. You can trim those pieces right off. Looks so much nicer. Let me trim the other side a little bit. There we go. We're going to attach our beak to our hood now. So this is going to go right in the center. Again, if you want to stitch that flat before you attach it, that's totally fine. We are going to put this, you know what, right in the center. Sometimes I eyeball this and I mess up. So you know what I'm going to do real quick? I'm going to fold this in half and give myself just the teeniest little notch there. Let's see, did I make it big enough to see? Just barely, but I can see it. All right, so I'm going to put my teeny little notch right there in the center. We want our straight edge lined up with our bias tape edge. This center is going to be very thick this time, so you probably will have to hand wheel stitch over that very middle part. That's fine. I'm going to pin this in place so that I keep it right in the center. Come on, little pincushion. I do my pins parallel to where I'm going to sew, and then I move them as I sew. I know a lot of times you want to pin perpendicular so you don't have to move them. Either way is fine, whatever you prefer. Alright, so it can line up exactly. I've got mine inset a little bit. I just want a little more beak to show. It looks so cute. Alright, we're going to back stitch on each end and attach this beak to the hood. So again, if you need to use your hand wheel to stitch over that center, you can help your machine out a little bit on the thick part. Oh my goodness, that's so cute. Okay, we're going to hem this whole edge so it'll be inside. So we're going to turn it like this. So we'll have a nice finished looking edge on the outside, and then our beak will be ready to point out. So on the inside of your hood, you're just going to fold that bias tape in just enough so that it's covered, and you're going to stitch all the way across. Back stitch at each end. Same thing with that center seam. You can use your hand wheel to help your machine get over the thick part. Whoops, I ran off. Let me back stitch there. Alright, let me make sure I got that. Yep, I ran right off the edge there, backed up and got it. So, it's covered. So cute. Alright, we're ready to put our eyes on now. So you can set your hood to the side. I am going to switch my thread now to a light cream color to do my eyes. Actually, I can leave the bottom pink. Okay, with our eyes and our pupils, you want to line that bottom straight edge up, but it's up to you if you want that pupil centered in your eye, like that. That's probably what I'm going to do. Or, if you watch cartoons sometimes, they'll move it a little bit closer to the center. And that is super cute as well. So you choose what you want, how exactly you want it placed. I'm going to put mine in the middle. Alright, and we're going to stitch the blue part or the pupil, whatever color you chose. If yours isn't also blue, we're going to edge stitch all the way around both of the pupils. I'm going to do it on the sewing machine. If you prefer hand stitching, feel free to hand stitch the eyes. They are very small, so whichever way you can do it neatly doesn't really matter. we're ready to pin them on. So take a minute. You have a placement on your pattern piece, but I always prefer to look at my finished hood and pin the eyes on based on what I actually sewed. There's so many places when you're cutting and sewing for things to have a little bit of variation here and there. So I'd always rather work with what I have actually created. So take a few minutes, pin them, get them in a spot you like. Okay, I like that. I'm happy with that. So I am going to machine stitch all the way around both of them. Again, if you think you can do it better hand stitching, absolutely. As long as they're attached securely, these are really just decoration. So whichever method you choose, get your eyes stitched on. Such a cute little flamingo. All that's left to do now is to attach the hood to the body of the towel. I'm going to switch my top thread back to pink real quick, and then we'll get that done. Alright, grab your body, your big towel, that's going to be the body of your flamingo. And we have a quick way to center these up. So you want to fold your towel in half, your big towel. Let's see. So we've got the edges lined up. We're going to fold it all the way in half. We want to pinch right here at this center. Hold that folded. Leave your fingers pinched together. Get your hood with the other hand. And same thing with it. We're going to fold that hood in half. Pinch that folded part together. You're going to put those two folds together. Got it? Pinched really good. You're going to open both of them. Pinch that part together. And voila, you have your towels centered on each other. I'm going to pin that in place so I don't shift around. My hood stays centered. Let me pin across here. And then this is all we have left to do. We're going to stitch the hood to the body towel, and it's finished. These edges are already the actual towel edges, so we don't have to do anything at all to them. When I stitch across here, I am not only going to back stitch, I'm actually going to triple stitch these two edges. There is going to be a lot of strain right where that hood's attached as it gets put onto the wearer. So I'm going to back stitch and then do it one more time just to make sure it's super securely attached. You can do a 1/2 inch seam allowance or a little more or a little less. We just want those finished edges covered so that all we see is the terry. I had so much fun sewing this adorable flamingo hooded towel with you. I hope you enjoyed it too. Please check out some of my other videos for more precious animal hooded towels, or visit my shop for those times when you are just too busy to do it yourself. You can find me here, there, and everywhere at Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. And I'll see you in the sewing room again soon.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.